Today's guest on Finally Seen is Eric Perardi, a respected Austin real estate developer whose story reads like a psychological thriller, except it's not fiction. Eric was targeted and manipulated by a con artist posing as a decorated war hero and federal operative. What followed was a harrowing journey through emotional terrorism, financial loss, and the slow unraveling of trust in everyone around him. However, this isn't a story about staying broken. It's about what happens when the fog lifts and a man chooses to reclaim his voice, his vision, and his values. Eric is here to share what happened and to stand in the truth of who he's become. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited and a little triggered by today's topic as well myself. You and I were talking a little bit beforehand, having been conned by someone myself in the past that I don't normally talk about because it's still triggering for me. So I really appreciate your vulnerability to come on today and share your story. I kind of teed it up a little bit that this guy posed as a federal operative and former decorated war hero. But I know from talking to you earlier, he groomed his victims for a while, though. So how did you end up meeting this person? So to kind of set the story, give us a little backstory there.
Yeah, it's groomed is an appropriate word. So I grew up kind of all-American kid. Played Division I hockey in college. Went on to eventually move to Austin and be a real estate developer. And I built a project called the Crossover, which is with some other partners, this big 240,000 square foot sports center. And it really anchors around ice hockey. And ice hockey in Texas is kind of a commodity. Dallas has a lot of rinks, but down here in Austin, we only had a few. So it was an opportunity to not only do something that I loved on the development side, but to blend a sport that I was extremely passionate about. So my son and a group of kids that I'd coached since they were like 4 years old were actually they were the first team to play a game on the ice at the Crossover. And ironically, Coda Youngblood, who we'll go with Coda, and then we'll talk about his other names later. But his son, Coda Jr., was kind of a little bit of a phenom. Ice hockey is one of those sports where, you start young, 4 or 5 years old, you learn how to skate. So by the time the kids are 10 or 11, they're pretty well advanced on the skating and they're learning all the other skills in the sport as they grow up. Well, according to his dad, now looking back, it could have been a lie. Coda had just started playing at 11 or 12 years old, and he enters our hockey program. And most of the kids that enter our hockey program at that age kind of go to learn to skate, learn to play, and then they stay in the rec league program. Travel hockey, like any travel sport, kids are playing all over. I've taken kids to China, Canada, Los Angeles. Like, it's a pretty labor-intensive sport, but also very competitive to make those teams.
Right.
So young Coda played one full season in rec league, and then he tried out for the travel hockey team, of which I was an assistant coach. My son was on, and then this group of, call it 15 kids who had always been on this team were trying out. And young Coda beats out a couple of these kids. Him and another kid, the Kumars, who were also victims in this, their son and Coda end up beating out a couple kids that had normally been on the team. So he had such natural talent. And his dad, wasn't around a lot. His mom was a doctor and she wasn't working. But the kid, had a lot of natural talent. He just needed to learn some of the other skills. So I took a liking to him. He became really good friends with my son. And you spend so much time with these families, traveling.
Yeah.
So Coda Junior or Senior had a pretty big air of mystery about him. He always wore kind of black clothes, black Crocs, like always had cash on him, was always like ready to leave at a moment's notice, had created this mystique about him. And I had heard a lot about him from other families. And then he is very engaging. Thank you for coaching my son. I used to play hockey. I love what you're doing. This place is amazing.
Really
You know,
buttering you up and
yeah, and looking back, I'm one of those kids that are adult now, but I say that grew up with praise and accolade. My love language would be words of affirmation. So he really preyed on that, right? That was something that I obviously was excited about. That I was this instrumental person in his son's life, and so I knew him for 2 or 3 years before he ever asked me for money. But I knew him on a personal level, traveling, and then knew his wife pretty well, and considered him a friend, or as close as you get to a father of a kid that you coach.
wow, that's incredible. And it's so interesting to think too that he was married with a child, and so
Two
one,
children,
two children.
yeah.
So you wonder,
And I had coached his older son a little bit too. He has an older son that we'll get into in this story. So I knew the whole family. Been to his house.
so yeah,
I mean,
you wouldn't think that there's this giant con going on. Um,
no,
and it turns out you weren't the first one that he had conned. So he had had good practice at making this con happen. And it
yeah,
always makes you wonder, did the family know? Um, were they in
yeah.
on it? What did they know? How did they not see? But then you can also see, okay, was he conning her and the family, the rest of the family?
I think the FBI probably said it best. It's a bit of Stockholm syndrome. I think the kids
Mm,
and his wife Gloria lived in fear. I think they found cell phones. He always had burner phones that had threatening messages on them.
mm,
Gloria was very much a part of the con and very much helping me believe that it was all real. Was she under duress when she did that? Was that the life that she led?
right,
I don't know.
right.
But
Only
yeah,
she could tell you. Yeah.
only she could tell me, right?
Um, so tell me, I guess, what the first time he asked you for money, how did that come about? What did that look like?
Well, yeah, and that's the beauty of him as a human being is that he, I think, is able to. So he's using stolen valor
Right,
because
which is a huge deal.
it's a huge deal, and he's using all of our patriotism for our respect for the military. I know you have a son that was in the military. Like, I went to military school. A lot of the victims are actually ex-military people. So he's tattooed from hands to all over his body with special forces tattoos that are real, according to people that I've been around. And it just is he the idea that he actually went to that level to actually put
Crafted.
that on his craft on his body and create this world that he lived in is pretty extraordinary. So I was going through a pretty bad divorce. My second wife was there was infidelity and drug use and some very sketchy characters, and so he used my vulnerabilities at the time and created basically, she had tested positive for some substances, and it looked like my divorce was heading in a certain direction. And then suddenly these social media posts come out about her and a boyfriend, and it's made to look like I'm the one that made all these posts. So I spend the next like two
Mm,
months of my divorce trying to prove that I didn't defame the mother of my daughter. So I've got 3 boys from my first wife, and this is my daughter's mom. And I had to hire private attorneys. I had to hire a civil attorney. I had a computer experts going through my phone and my computer. So it turned the tides of the divorce. And then he shows up and basically says that he is all of these social media posts are true and that he has proof of it and that he's going to look into her behavior further. So that's the con. So it
mm,
starts, February. It was actually Super Bowl Sunday of 2022. The divorce started in October of 2021.
whew.
And he doesn't ask me for money until June of 2022. And by this time, I've known him for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So you developed a sense of trust, and he's trying to help you. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So again, I pride myself on being a father, and my kids are the most important thing in the world to me. I've got 3 boys and a girl, and if I don't do anything else in life right, I hope that being a dad was the thing that I did well. So my son and his son are out in in Vegas for a showcase where they're playing hockey, and they're with um, family friends, a coach that's the general manager of the crossover, a friend of mine works for me, and then Coda and his son are out there. And my son Eris, who is now 18, at the time was 15, was approached by Coda Senior and basically told that he was in danger and that he needed to make sure that the whole time he was in Vegas that he stayed near other kids and don't go wander off alone. So
Interesting.
my
Okay.
poor 15-year-old child calls me terrified, right?
Wow.
Now, everyone in our circle of friends believes this man is a federal agent and a
Right.
decorated military veteran
So
and
he
have
would
no
have
reason,
information. Yeah.
right? No reason to question that. He also then repeats this lie to my son's best friend's father, who was a friend, really good friend of ours, who, looking back, I think he groomed himself into my friends' lives as well, so that they would tell me when he came to me with this lie that all of it was real because they
Ugh.
believed he was who he was, right? And he
Yeah.
had that information. He also told the head of our hockey organization that he needed to speak with me immediately, and he was flying back from Vegas that night, and the next morning would be at my house. Now, he always had like burner phones. You could never communicate with him unless you saw him in person. He would, I'll call you from an unknown number. So it was always a clandestine kind of spy error about him. So that morning in June, I receive a phone call from an unknown number, and he says, "I'm coming to your address. Your friends gave me the address of your house. I'll be there in 15 minutes." It's hard because I remember my little daughter. She was now 6, but she was like 3 at the time. Was asleep in the other room, and I went out on the back porch of the house that I was renting. So at this time, I was out of my marital home. My ex was living there with some other characters once in a while, and I was so there were a lot of elements to the story that I'm about to tell you that make it believable based on her behavior
Yeah.
and a messy divorce. So he comes to the house. We always had to leave our cell phones or things in other rooms because he was always, everyone's listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, and we live in a world where you say something on your phone and then Instagram shows you a message. So the idea that everyone's listening is not that far fetched, right?
Right.
We all experience that. So he lays out this long plan that basically I just had gone through mediation with her, and he had basically she had asked for $3.5 million and full custody of my daughter, which I immediately said no to, obviously. So he says that he knows all about that custody hearing and that she did that because she actually has worked with the cartels, that her family, who owns car dealerships all over Central Texas, and that grew up in South Texas, have ties to the cartels, and that she was actually hired the cartel to kidnap my son, and then when I go to pay the ransom, that they're going to kill him and kill me for my life insurance policy, and that she's going to be the beneficiary of my life
100%
insurance.
believable. 100% believable.
And my life insurance policy is 7 million. She asked for $3.5 million in the divorce.
So yeah, it all the pieces. I mean, I would have believed it
Well,
too.
he also has he knows my social security number. He knows my insurance number. He knows my bank accounts. He knows my businesses. He knows everything about my life. And he says, "I'm here to protect your children. Can you write this $70,000 check?" Man, that was a hard decision to make.
Yeah.
And first I want to say, like, the tragedies that's happened this weekend are just unfathomable. Like, for the children and the people that have lost their children in the area that I live here in Central Texas. And I said this to my friend today, and I don't mean this in any way that is, you know, and it's like I paid $1 million to make sure my children didn't die. And I know any of those people would give $1 million to have their children back. So I think the hardest part about not being believed or people asking me why it was so stupid or why did you do this or this wasn't believable. I just say, what is the price that you would pay to protect your children?
Right.
I
No,
don't know that there is
it,
one.
it looks like, I mean, he orchestrated it very intricately, and I could see how you would 100% believe that, especially since she literally just asked for half of your,
Life
the
insurance.
equivalent of what your half your life insurance. So I don't know how, I don't know how he would have necessarily known that. Obviously, he found all the information to be able to be
I
believable.
have a theory about that the sleuths can research later in their life as
I'm
this
sure.
goes on. But someone gave him information about my life.
Right.
Let's
I can imagine what your theories are on that.
yeah, yeah.
So, I guess advance to where because I know we could do an entire series off of on your story, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
we've talked
yeah,
about that, but
just from that period of time, from June until April of 2023, I gave him almost $1 million, and that did not come with hey. It was always the money's coming back. He always had some sort of I have these artwork or coins, and look, that was his con to other people was that he dealt in these rare artifacts, and that was the way that he worked with the cartels and had this kind of front from the government. So he had a clock dealer that I would write these checks to, this 75-year-old man. He had 3 ex police officers that were telling me that this was all true. His wife was telling me that this was not in a vacuum. It was
right.
5 or 6 people on his payroll who were all convincing me that my children were going to die. They broke into my home. They broke into my car. They stole my gun. He faked the death of his own child. He raised a
Yeah.
fortune off of the death of his son. I mean, this was 8
It's
of
it
just,
sounds like it's one of those the truth is stranger than fiction type of things. Like, wow.
it's psychological warfare.
Well, especially to your children, I mean, doing it to adults that's one thing and it's awful, but I mean, doing it to a child, that's like next level evil.
Well, he would tell me where my children were. So, like, there's an example where my son was at a track running with his friends, and I was in hiding, so to speak, because he told me every time I didn't have my daughter that I was in danger because my ex had made sure that they would not come after me when I had my daughter. Now, the
Mm.
boys were not hers, and so they were part of the kidnapping, plot, which was also believable. Um, so he would say, "Hey, Eris is at the Canyon Ridge track in Steiner Ranch. He's wearing a blue East Coast team sweatshirt with his friend. We're watching him, but the cartels are also watching him." And then I would call my son, and he was like, "Hey, I'm at the track with Swanee, and I'm wearing a blue t-shirt or sweatshirt." And I'm like, "Go home, turn on your Life 360, leave." So I actually
Wow.
sent my son to play hockey in Connecticut per Coda's doing because he was playing in Texas, and he said, "Hey, if he makes his team in Connecticut, he'll be safer there." So Eris was up in Connecticut. So my other son was going away to college in Paris, and then I just had my 15-year-old and my daughter to worry about. So I was couch surfing, hiding, all of these things. But yeah, he would tell me where my children were. They would drive by my house. I mean, he had a very orchestrated.
Yeah.
And the FBI talks about it like when you're in the middle of this con, it's constantly they need more money. The phone
Mhm.
calls come. It's always you what I call the fog of the con. And I discussed this. You don't, and it's like a fog of war. You don't have time to think
Yeah.
rationally.
Yeah.
And if you did, some of this wouldn't make sense, but you don't have time to unravel it. And then he is
Well, and he's
so
got you in such a heightened state that
right.
you can't think clearly. So you put that on top of the timing, the hurry, 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 hurry. Yeah, it's just impossible. Of course, looking back, you can see things, but anyone who has ever been conned can tell you that in the midst of it, you don't
Right.
have the capacity to fully think of all these things.
Well, and if you've ever been through a really bad marriage or divorce where you actually believe that your
Yes.
spouse was probably also conning you, which I
Yeah.
know you have, Chrissy, the idea that you would say, okay, is it believable that my spouse is doing this? Someone that I trusted who I've found out has lied to me, cheated on me, done all these things. Or is this guy lying about being a federal officer and in the military?
Right. Right.
Like, first off, I'm so naive. I don't believe that people lie about those things.
Right. Because it's
And
despicable to
he
lie.
built a world around it, and his wife and everyone else confers that he's real.
Yeah.
But this one was very easy to believe. So he
So,
used that, right? He used
yeah.
that.
He, do you think he targeted you from the beginning, or do you think,
Oh, for sure. I
okay.
mean, I was very high profile building this rink. Um, Looking back, I had built a medical office building in his neighborhood in
Mm.
Maynard that he claimed he didn't know I owned. He knew everything about my life.
So I guess he just got lucky that
Yeah.
your ex-wife had all these things that he could kind of cling on to.
Well, and he knew about her potential infidelity and other things years before I did because she was friends with his wife, and there were rumors that I didn't know about of a girls trip weekend to Fredericksburg that I didn't know about that I found out later from other
Interesting.
people. So he and his wife were basically watching the unraveling of my life,
Wow.
waiting for me to find out.
Wow. So you figure all this out. You figure out he's not who he says he is, and you go undercover, right?
Yeah, that's an extraordinary story. So
That had to be scary.
it was. And I look at all of the elements, I mean, I definitely found my faith in all of this and how much God played a part in this. I mean, this person has been a con artist for 30 plus years, and there are so many victims. And the intersection of what it took for him and I to actually cross paths in life, there are no coincidences. I mean, it's just, there's no way. And even from down to how I got to the FBI. So he had given me this flag for collateral
Right.
that was a Civil War flag, I think I told you about.
Yeah, quote
And
unquote,
I
right?
constantly been trying to authenticate it. And I finally found somebody who could authenticate it. And they were like, wow, this is crazy. This flag actually belongs to me. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, this man, St. Jovite, Coda Youngblood. Now, I only knew him as Coda Youngblood, but St. Jovite, Coda Youngblood, um, had bought the flag with his wife Gloria a few years earlier. Now, Coda claimed that flag was in his possession of his family for 50 years, and he claimed it was worth $2 million. And if he died trying to save my children, that he would, I could sell the flag and get my money back and take care of his family. So this guy, who's like the number one Civil War flag dealer, is like, no, he actually bought it for 80 grand. He actually owes me 40 more. This guy, Marvin, who's a cop, has been sending me money, which basically I was paying for the flag. And he hasn't paid me for it. And, I hung it in his house in Maynard, like describes the whole thing. So now I find out this name, St. Jovite Coda Youngblood, and I give it to a friend of mine who actually is a Secret Service agent, and he's able to background check it and find out that St. Jovite Coda Youngblood faked the death of his children and his family in a car accident, drunk driving accident in California, stole coins, went to Australia, gambled it all away, and served time in prison. Now, thanks to the California penal system, they erased his felony
Mm.
from 2011. So there was no trace of that felony. And then there's a whole nother element of this family that he held hostage in Florida that believed that their kids were going to be sex trafficked and killed. And this guy was a computer programmer, and he was in Florida basically ruining my life. So he's the one that did the original post, but then
Uh,
there were 1,000 more posts after that saying I was a pedophile, sex trafficking children, laundering money, like creating all of this uncertainty, sending it to investors. I mean, he basically ruined my life online, in person, everywhere else, and claimed that the cartel were doing that to put pressure on me to pay to pay up and all of the things. My son was in Connecticut, and he had been dating this girl, Bentley Tolan, and they'd stayed dating while he was away. She lived in Austin, and I had met her father over Thanksgiving, and he was a criminal defense attorney, and he was the only person that I could think of to call. So I called him and told him the story, which he was like, wow, this is unbelievable. He then called the U.S. Attorney's office, and then he called the FBI. And then he had me within 2 days into the FBI's office. And it was literally like out of the movies where you see where it's like the window and they've got the camera behind it. And it's 2 federal agents with guns and me sitting in this cold, dark, metal chair, metal table. And I'm telling them this unbelievable story. And Justin Noble, ironically, the FBI agent, had just left cartel and violent crimes unit and moved over to white collar crime. And Justin said on a podcast recently, and he also testified in court, that when Eric walked into our offices, he had all the earmarkings of a kidnapped PTSD violent crime victim. He had never seen a white collar crime victim with that much trauma. And it really, man, when you see the other 48 victims, we all share it. I mean, this is what he psychologically did. So that I was the first person to report him. The FBI had they had no record of him. So within that next day, they find 12 or 13 similar reported cases with other aliases. And now they realize they've got a serial con artist who is not only stealing money from people, but using stolen valor, the military, and psychological torture about people's children and cartels to extract money from these people. So I am one of many victims who fell prey to this. Now, mine was my children were going to be killed. I think it was the most egregious, besides the guy that he had trapped in Florida. So we devised a scheme for me to go undercover with, so because I was in the development business, they had this guy whose name is Joe, which I'm sure is not his real name, who looked like somebody out of Hell's Angels.
Okay.
And just a giant biker looking guy who was really in the military and had several special forces tattoos on his arm.
His were earned.
Yeah, his were real. And the story was that Joe had been to my house and had seen the flag, asked me about it, knew about my wife's behavior during the divorce. I'd told him about the cartel wanting to kill my children. I said I still needed money because they always needed more money. My dad unfortunately died in January. It was terrible. And Coda had faked the death of his own parents, who the FBI also found out were still alive. But it was like telling me, I understand about your father. My dad died when I was young. And I mean, he just used every lie in the world to be compassionate with you. So they were even at the hospital in the parking lot during the ice storm trying to get me to give them more money when my father's literally passing away in January of 2023. So here's my hero's gone. I've realized I've given $1 million to a con man. Everything's been a lie. And I was just like, yeah, I will go undercover. Like I will do,
what else?
And I had been an actor in LA and I was a sales guy. I'm like, sure, let's create a script. Let's do it. I want to put this guy away. And the great thing about Coda is that he loves to hear himself talk.
Oh, don't they?
I mean, loves to tell a story. So all I had to do was play the part of asking the questions to prompt it. So Joe and I meet at this Johnny Carrabba's on 183, and there are 2 federal agents inside. There's federal agents in the car with long-range cameras. Joe has one of these, like a credit card holder that goes to your phone.
Yeah.
So Coda can turn his phone off, but inside this was actually a listening device. So the phone was turned off, but they've got camera footage from the inside, and then they've got the whole thing on audio, and he lays it all out. I mean, just like he told it to me. This is what my ex-wife did. She hired the cartel. My kids are in danger. His kid died. Everything that I told the FBI, he told them for an hour in this interview. And the agent that was there, he conferred that those tattoos on his arm looked real. He's like, I'm in the military. This guy's unbelievable. He knows everything about the drug cartel, and he knows everything about the military, things that he should not know. So then we get in the car, and he had told the federal agent that he would give him this bat. So another part of his scam was he had these bats and items that he claimed like Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth had, and that he had wrapped them in cellophane, and they had the DNA of them when they did a famous hit or some famous at bat. So we drive around on the other side of the highway to meet James, the clock dealer, whose son had been presumed dead and in Florida, which is a whole nother story. And James gives the bat to me to give to the federal agent. Now, on the drive over, Coda pulls out a gun and an axe in his car and says, I hope you're not lying to me. So I still look back and say, the FBI put me back in a car with this guy who now I've just sat and went undercover. And I'm in a car with him. And he's like, you're one of my best friends. And I know, but you would never betray me. And so I've got to play this part.
Ugh.
And he basically threatens me in the car with the gun and the axe. And then we come back over and give the FBI the bat. And then he, makes arrangements to meet with the FBI officer to get the money the next day, blah, blah, blah. And then now at this point, they asked me to stop calling him back. So now he knows something's happened. So I get phone calls from James, the clock guy. I get phone calls from his wife. And now I've also been recording him for 3 or 4 days now. And it's the first time they've ever had him on camera or any audio recordings of him in the 30 years of this con.
Wow.
And this con extends from Ohio to Illinois to California to Nevada to Texas. And, now we're currently at 48 victims over a 30-year period. And it's, in restitution in Texas, it's about $12 million. I think it's probably closer to $50 million that was taken over those periods of time.
Tired of overpriced energy drinks full of junk? Same. That's why I use Babello, a self-carbonating hydration packet that gives you clean energy, electrolytes, and vitamins without the crash. Just add water, shake, and sip. It's way more affordable than typical energy drinks and way better for you. Use code ChrissyBernal15 at checkout to get 15% off at drinkbabello.com. Hydration just got an upgrade.
You get him locked away.
Well, that took a while. Like it took 6 months. I mean, this is a white collar crime. So it took 5 months.
So you had to be undercover that whole time?
I mean, I was basically, he knew that I had gone undercover. So the FBI raided his house. Now they're watching him. He actually almost arranged the death of 2 victims to kill each other. So he told one of the victims that if somebody came to his door he didn't recognize, he should shoot him. So that old man had the gun behind the door. The other victim was headed to the door, ex-military and ex-police officer, believing that Coda was real. And he was going to the door to work this old man over because he believed that Coda had been betrayed. And the FBI intersects them, but they're both about to shoot each other and kill each other. And the FBI stops it. So all of this is going on. I'm kind of like waiting. And then, so this happens in April, May, and then in July 31st, he actually gets arrested.
Wow.
And put in prison. And then we have to go to the bail hearing. So the bail hearing is quite extraordinary because his dead son that he said had been beheaded by the cartels and killed because he was involved with fentanyl and drugs, which very much was topical. He used every story in the world to make it topical, right? So his son was in California and he had told his son to disappear off of social media and disappear because the cartels were after him. And his wife and his younger son, who I had coached, believed that he had been responsible for the death of his brother, that he had called him, and that he was responsible for the phone call that allowed the cartel to find him. So I'd actually met his younger son at the crossover, held this kid in my arms who's crying and says his brother's been murdered. And his wife and him are telling me my son is next. So we walk into the courtroom through the metal detectors, and behind me walks Eventine, his oldest son, Coda Jr., and Gloria, his wife. And I'm like, what? And the FBI was like, yeah, we found him. So Eventine walks over to me and says, Coach Perardi, thank you so much for putting my dad in jail, something I wanted to do my whole life. And hugs me and starts crying. So now I'm holding both of these boys.
Wow.
And I'm like, a father figure to them at this point, and their dad I've just put in prison. And we've got 30 some victims who are piling in behind me who are going to sit on one side of the court. This family is going to sit on the other side of the court with him. And it's his wife and his two boys on this side, and then 30 plus people on this side who are all his victims for this bail hearing. I mean, it was extraordinary. And then come to find out that Eventine, the oldest son, had believed his entire life since he was 8 years old. Coda had burned down 2 homes in California, one with a body in it, and had committed arson, but got away with it and called it insurance fraud, and claimed
So
the allegedly and claimed the cartels had done it. But that little boy, since he was 8 years old, had believed he was responsible for the death of that person in the house.
Wow.
And the FBI proved that Coda had actually set the fire. So the psychological torture of his own children and his family and all of the victims, the judges were and the judge was a military judge. The craziest thing is, and this is where the victim shaming continues, his entire defense in his sentencing hearing and during the trial was that I was the real criminal. All of us victims are criminals. All he was doing was helping us, and that I was trying to hide money from my ex-wife, and that I was laundering money through the cartels and he was helping me. And this whole thing was concocted by me in order to hide money from her. And then she gets called by the federal witnesses and testifies that she believed that I was the real criminal and responsible for all the social media posts and all of it, that I was all orchestrated behind it. So I had to sit through 17 hours in a court where I was on trial as a witness for the defense, and then prosecution as their defense that I'm the real criminal. And they unloaded my entire life. I mean, they went from everything that I did to put him in jail to every ounce of my marriage, and painted me as this jealous husband who was vengeful, and all I wanted to do was get back on my wife for cheating on me. And this was all orchestrated by me. Not to mention there are 30 other victims who I've never met, who have all had stolen money from him. So thank God the jury of 12 did not believe any of it. And they gave him 90 years, which is an extraordinary crime, for a white collar crime. And then just like, I know I'm doing a lot of talking, I'm sorry, but
no, it's fantastic.
During the 90, like a jury in, any sort of kind of civil white collar crime, they can assess their judgment. Hey, $10 million. And then the judge actually gets the final say, right? Whatever the jury chooses. So we go back to the trial, which has just ended in December this year. So this thing went on from June of 2022 to him being convicted in 2024. I went undercover in 2023, him convicted in April of 2024. My divorce ends 1 week before this, and then she testifies in federal court. That was all. And her dad is ex-military. He was really an Army Ranger. So here she is up there testifying in a case of stolen valor against this horrible human. It's unfathomable, because I know you can understand that, to see someone you love betray you in all aspects, from a friendship and a person. But and then so his trial ends in December of 2024, and the judge actually and he testified. The testimonies are extraordinary. He testified on his own behalf, which the federal judge said they've never seen. And the act was actually, they stopped the courtroom because they said, do you have any more witnesses? So my ex is his only witness. And then the defense says, no, we have no more witnesses. And he stands up and says, yes, I'm going to testify on my own behalf.
Wow.
So, they have to sequester the jury. They go for like an hour break to talk him out of it. He says no. He stands back up there and doubles down. Eric is a pedophile, sex trafficking children, laundering money. I was saving all these victims. All of this is a lie. And just unleashes, like, it is an Academy Award performance. Like, I wish I could find the actor to read his part, because they would want to make this immediately, because it is the most extraordinary speech you've ever seen. Like,
wow.
for somebody to be that delusional and believe and lie and spin. But the court got to see him at his essence.
Yeah.
And I know you know what a con man looks like. When they are in their element,
Yeah.
they are so believable and so they believe it, they sell it. So they got to see that, which was extraordinary. He had gambled all of this away. He was a degenerate gambler. He was going to Vegas, living a high roller life, gambling all of this money away from these people, not flying around, saving our children, saving the world, but just getting on a flight from Austin to Vegas, living a high roller life. So then the judge finally, during the sentencing, they brought up more victims. He again speaks for another 45 minutes, which was extraordinary. And so the court is going to give him 17 years. That's the sentence based on the crimes. It was, laundering money, money laundering and wired fraud. The way I transferred money which is a get a God thing. I transferred money from an account in Washington State to Texas and then wrote the check. So it instituted wire fraud. I would never have thought to do that. It was totally accident. God definitely had a part in that. So his maximum sentence is going to be 17 years. Now the government asked for 40 years. And the judge says in his sentencing, I was never going to give you 40 years. I thought the government was insane when I walked in here. And after listening to you, Mr. Youngblood, and seeing the depth of your lies and the emotional and psychological damage, now he starts yelling at the judge and us in the courtroom that I'm the real criminal and he's pointing at me. So they shackle him. Wow. Federal agents remove him from the courtroom. And then the judge leans into his lawyer and says, I need you to listen to what I'm about to tell you because I need you to repeat it to Mr. Youngblood, and then goes into a 5-minute speech about stolen valor, about what he's done, the psychological torture, how he's been a judge who's tried mafia crimes, murders, serial killers, and he has never seen a criminal with this depth of brevity and hatred and just emotional torture that he did to his victims. And he said, I actually believe I would like to give you more than 40 years. And he sentenced him to 40 years. And it's fourth or fifth largest white collar convictions outside of Bernie Madoff in U.S. history.
Wow. Man, my heart rate is like going crazy.
Sitting in the courtroom, you're just like, when they, I guess, what the craziest thing was, do you remember the movie Red Dragon?
A little bit.
So Red Dragon is kind of the prequel to Silence of the Lamb.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
Will Graham is the detective that basically hired Hannibal Lecter as a serial killer to catch serial killers, right?
Yeah.
And then he finds out that Hannibal's the real serial killer. That is the relationship that Coda and I had. Here I am hiring someone to protect my children from dying, and he's the one really creating that threat.
Yeah.
So when the verdict gets handed down in the jury trial, when they read it, if the first verdict is guilty, which is my crime of 3 of the 5, then we know all the rest are going to fall. He turns and stares at me in court and puts his hand on the table because he always talked about how he was, this sharpshooter and military, and puts his hand on the table and stares at me. And I stare back at him. And this whole courtroom is watching. It's just him and I staring at each other while they're reading off guilty, guilty, guilty. And then he smiles and winks at me and goes like that, like, you caught me. It was unbelievable. Like the FBI,
I have a heart attack.
All the victims are like, how did you not look away? And I was like, I'm not giving him that self-satisfaction. And it took every ounce of the body in me to stare at this person who I thought was one of my best friends, because he had alienated me from every person to believe that he was the only person that could save me. And it was a game to him. Even when I was on the stand, I had to reposition. If you've ever been in court, I tried to reposition myself behind the court reporter monitors so he couldn't see me, because he would just stare at me and smile at me.
Wow.
It's insane. Like, I believe we're relatively the same age. The life I had, he claimed he was an engineer, claimed he played hockey. He has a GED, claimed he was in the military. He had his sons are a hockey player. I think he wanted my life, and I was the ultimate mark that he was going to take apart. But I think it was his ultimate downfall, because he went after somebody who was going to come back
Yeah.
after him,
Yeah.
right? The rest
Well,
of these victims were silent.
that was something I wanted to make sure we brought up, because I'm, like I said, I know we're going to continue this conversation in some capacity, because obviously it
Yeah,
needs
it's a
to be
lot, right?
it
It's a
needs to
lot.
be a movie. It needs
Yeah,
to be a movie for sure. But
probably a TV series at this point. It's too
I,
damn long.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
You and I offline have talked about how most victims are so ashamed of it that they do stay silent, which is probably one of the ways that he was able to keep going for 30 years, and probably would have for another 30 years if you hadn't
right.
stepped up. What is it? I guess you and I again have talked offline, and you said that, you feel like God gave you this to do something with it. Why is that important to you now?
Well, I feel like, you know, and I think I told you, like John Walsh, when his son Adam was kidnapped and killed, John was a hotel developer. You know what John never did again? Was
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, when something like that happens extraordinarily, I mean, thank God my kids were not killed. But when an event like this happens in your life and you're given this gift of your children are saved, the truth is revealed, you've made it through, and you've really given yourself over to Jesus and God and said, hey, this is all I got. I mean, it was either drugs, alcohol, or the Bible, right? I mean, there was nothing in between, and there were plenty of nights where I put the Bible on top of that gun case and I had to touch the Bible before I could put the fingerprints on that gun, whether I thought someone was breaking into my house or I just thought tonight's the night I can't go on. Jesus saved me. And I believe that in every ounce of my body. He saved my children, saved me. And I threw myself into learning the Bible and learning the stories of the Bible. And I just feel like all of us victims talk about it. And you probably know this, Christy, there's life before Coda and there's life after Coda.
Yeah.
And nothing will ever be the same.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've got to tell you, it took me a long time, and I'm still working on it, a long time to uh, regain my sense of worth. Because I thought, how stupid are you that you fell for all these things? I'm still working on it, but yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about. And so it's incredibly courageous that you're coming forward and sharing this and
Well, if you're
using it.
silenced, they win, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
silence, they win. He created a world of mystery around our silence. Don't tell anyone. I'll protect you. If you talk about this, your lives are further in danger.
Yeah.
Like that's the con. Silence is his ultimate weapon. And that's you read in the Bible the same thing. Like silence is the ultimate weapon. Like not talking about what God's done for you or how much things have changed your life. That's what the enemy wants, right? That's what keeps them happy. The truth, being able to come out and say, hey, this happened to me. I had this happen. Not be embarrassed by it, but own it and just say, look, it happened. I don't know what I would do different. This is the plan that was given to me. This is what happened. And I'm going to go forward and I'm going to try to help and tell my story to as many people as I can. Talk about stolen valor. Talk about how, you need to vet, there should be things in place. The irony of what he does in this cash con is you think about like, if we've all had the fraud alert. Someone tried to buy a TV
Yeah.
with our credit card, right? And they immediately shut your credit card down. You can't even use it, right?
Yeah.
When you take out cash out of a bank is not allowed to tell you, Chrissy,
Yeah. Yeah.
you cannot withdraw that money.
Yeah.
But if you and I are used to taking $2,000 or $3,000 out, and suddenly we take out $70,000, why is there not a federal system in place that is an alert that allowed you to call somebody from the FBI and say, this is what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, are you under duress? Why are you asking for this much money? Are you okay?
Yeah. I
You
can
can
see how it'd
have
be a
it,
fine line between, our freedoms.
privacy. Right.
Yeah.
But what if we could sign up for that fraud
Yeah.
or sign our parents up for that fraud alert or
Mm.
somebody who's elderly, right? The other piece of it is all of us are saddled with IRS debts, credit card debts, and bank loans or loans to families. So he goes to jail, gets convicted, and none of us victims have the right to write off our debt. But all the credit card companies and the banks wrote off our debt and then filed judgments against all of us.
Wow.
So we're now have the choice of bankruptcy, loss of homes. Some of the families reverse mortgage their homes. They're now living in homes that they don't own anymore, and they're stuck in their own prisons. They've lost their 401ks, their future, their W-2 employees, so they can't make it back. They don't have a retirement. Their children have lost their any sort of inheritance. It's gone.
It's
And
lifelong
they're
damage.
still being hounded by credit card companies and banks. So I would love to try to change the laws that say, hey, if you're conned and that person is found convicted
Guilty.
of this crime and there is no restitution of getting the money back because he gambled it away, we should at least be forgiven of our debts,
Yeah.
right? We didn't do anything wrong except for try to protect our children or, give this person money. He took it. The casinos allowed him to gamble it.
Yeah.
They should be prosecuted as well. They knew he was a criminal. Like it's just I love the FBI for what they've done for me, and I love the justice system worked in this case. But the victims are left with just a landmine of PTSD and collateral damage that is just beyond what anyone can comprehend.
I agree with you on getting things changed. There was lasting stuff for, I think, everyone who I see a variety of cons that, I've been a victim of as well. And you're right, there are lasting effects. And
the nightmares are real.
Yeah.
You wake up in the middle of the night. Mine was people were going to break into my house. I've woken up with him standing over my bed. I know my children have heard me yell out in the middle of the night. I mean, those things are real. They don't go away.
Yeah.
Hopefully they come less of, but they don't go away. And then, you're triggered by, you see a place you visited, but, I can't leave Austin. I've got children here. So when I'm not in the city, I'm not as triggered, but in the city that I live in, a lot of things remind me of it.
Yeah. The Austin area is triggering for me as well. And so,
I'm sorry that this brought this back up for you, Chrissy. I mean, I can feel it through.
Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out.
Zoom. I wish I could just reach out and hug you and tell you it was going to be okay.
No,
that's so many victims of just, I've gotten to sit with them and they thank me for what I was able to do. And we just hug each other and they just tell me, thank you. And they call me all the time and I try to be an ear to them and converse with them and vice versa. So it forms a weird sort of friendship and bond that and I feel that with you, even though our cons were different.
And I think the more you talk about it, the easier it will get. I haven't really talked about mine a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because I was so ashamed. And I still haven't fully thought through what I want to share and things like that of my story. I have shared some of the violence I've experienced, but I've only touched on it. Very few people know like the depth of everything. So I appreciate you sharing your story with me and allowing me the opportunity to help spread your story as well. I think the way that we met isn't coincidental. And, we met through somebody who was friends with our son. So he's known our family for 20 something years.
Right.
And he doesn't know that side of my story. So it's just a God thing that we would be placed together.
For sure.
So, and, having the connections that I do because of the girls, I got into PR because of the girls. And I got into storytelling. I've always been a storyteller, but I got into it, the visibility aspect, because of our twins. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could probably relate to this. All the things that felt so important before are not important.
Yeah.
And the only thing that you really have that is your family and your friends and your kids. And it's extraordinary because, if you didn't have them, you would have just disappeared and ran and walked away from it all, because that would have been the easy thing to do. But staying and you creating a PR around it and creating opportunities for your daughters and financially figuring a way to keep going
Yeah.
is the strength of God, and you recognizing that this person cannot break you, that only God can tell you when you're done,
Yeah.
and that you have to keep going. And if it's not for you, it's for them, for your husband, or for other people. But eventually it becomes for you. And you're like, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm gonna stand up and pick myself up, and I'm gonna regain the life, but I'm gonna do it in a meaningful way where it matters, right? So
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast too, was because I realized that I was still playing really small because I was still holding on to that loss of sense of worth and that embarrassment around those aspects of my story. And I was keeping myself small.
right,
And it hit me in the shower one day that I have a big desire to help people,
right,
huge desire. But I can't do that if I keep playing small. My level of impact will be diminished, and it's actually selfish of me to not get bigger with my story and sharing other people's stories. And so that's one reason why this podcast is called Finally Seen, because
right. Well, when they say when a bear is going to attack you, what are you supposed to do? Get bigger,
get bigger.
right?
Yep.
So you were attacked by the devil or some enemy.
Yeah.
Definitely get bigger.
Yep.
That's the only way
I
to get
love that.
stronger, right?
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap this up for today. I feel like there's definitely a lot we can do here. And boy, my brain is going. I've got lots of tabs opening right now.
Well, the stolen valor aspect, I think, man, I think, we're at a place in our country where we're starting to reappreciate our military. I mean,
Hmm.
we've seen them do some extraordinary things, and these men and women really put their lives on the line. So
Yeah.
to have somebody take that and use it in the way that he did, and there are other people out there doing the same, it just needs to stop.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be a way they can get our, there's going to always find a way to get our money. We need to stop that way
Yeah.
of them doing that.
Well, Eric, again, thank you so much for being vulnerable and coming on the podcast today and sharing your story. I know it was obviously hard for you and obviously hard for me, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you, Chrissy, and I look forward to more and more discussions. And thank you for believing in me and wanting to hear my story.
Absolutely.
God bless
All
you.
right. Phew. Now I'm sure the audience needs to go take a breather, let their heart rate lower down
Yeah.
and whatnot. And so again, thank you, Eric. And we'll see where this goes.
Thank you very much. Bye.